time to grow with the SEO Queen. Receive the perfect leads like never before. No traffic is gonna explode. It's time to grow.
Welcome to the Jazz and Tech Lounge with Lady Z, a podcast about the secrets to success in technology, music, and business on Bashani Radio, iHeartRadio, and iTunes. Bashani Radio, always talking about everything from New York City. You can listen to the Jazz and Tech Lounge with Lady Z on any mobile phone or tablet device. The Jazz and Tech Lounge with Lady Z, where we explore tech and enjoy the music and learn the secrets to success in technology, business, and music. Please follow us online at www.ladyzhe.com and on all social networks at Lady Z. Make sure you pull out your phones and go to your Instagram and follow me at Lady Z on Instagram. Thank you so much. So today's guest is, I'm excited for you guys to hear this interview because he is the Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer for the Global Business Incubation nonprofit organization that's doing some incredible things internationally. I did not know that we had a mutual acquaintance as we were scheduling this interview. So I want to give a shout out to Terrence Winslow, one of my Facebook friends, mentors, just a good friend and brother. But Dr. Paul Ruffin has 36 years of business management and IT experience with background in international trade and information sciences when it comes to fiber optics, supercomputing, and open source software. He is an expert, especially when it comes to enterprise system development. He is very skilled at solving problems and integrating technology into business models in a cost-effective, reliable, and incredible ways. He's a dedicated professional with, strong understanding, expertise in database hierarchies, network architectures, and telecommunication systems. And he has an extensive record of designing, deploying, and managing projects that require installation, operation, and maintenance to maximize system integrity. So I want to introduce to some and present to others, none other than Dr. Paul Ruffin. How are you today?
I'm very well, and thank you for the introduction. I'm honored to if you really knew my story, you'd have maybe a few other things that wouldn't be so good. But thank you. It's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to be talking with you. I love your enthusiasm, and we've been having a great conversation, and I'm looking forward to continuing it.
Yeah. So. You mentioned to me, about your connection to Randall Robinson. I think especially during this time, just the issue of reparations is something that a lot of my friends have been bringing up on a consistent basis. So you have a connection to TransAfrica. So can you share a little bit with our listeners about that?
Well, I was a kid in trouble, and I wound up looking at some very interesting jail time at the sweet age of 18. And my father was in the military at the time, 3-war veteran, by the way. And my mother was working as a civil servant for the military. So I was raised on Navy and Navy bases, and in that whole military construct. So after I did my little drug program stint with Synanon Foundation, interesting enough, another one of the first out of the LA area. But I came back to the Bay Area, and I was immediately taken up under his wing of W. Warner Beckett, who was part of Randall Robinson, and basically from from remembrance of the stories, it goes kind of like this. There were two aspects that they needed to deal with back in the 50s and 60s. W. Warner Beckett was actually the gentleman who started a company called New Lady Industries, which was the first magazine for black women in the 50s, which later was bought by Johnson and became Ebony Magazine. That particular project.
Hold on. You just casually dropped that little historical nugget. I did not know that.
Yeah. Look here, Beckett was so mean. He was such a marketer. He was the one in the 50s and 60s that would print Bibles, and he would put, if the Bibles were being sold to Japanese, they were all Japanese images in the Bible. And same thing with black Bibles and European Bibles. But he was that kind of marketing genius. And so they knew that they knew at that time. And I remember reading through a document that was part of the national security. It was a national security document. There was. It wasn't. How can I say? It wasn't illegal, but it was illegal for black folks to be thinking about or working to do business with Africa. It was against national security interests back in the 60s. And there were documents that were actually produced with that statement. So working to overcome that objection and that issue, they decided to create two, from what I understand, they decided to create two different TransAfricas that function. One would function politically in Washington to move and deal with the laws and that construct. But the other was centered around economic development and creating a joint venture between, at that time, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea, through an economic development pact that those three countries had initiated called the Mana River Union Treaty. And so when we were able to, with 52% of the corporation owned in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea, and 48% owned here, we had players such as Barclays Bank and all kinds of phenomenal names and partners in order to make this economic development construct happen. Because, interesting enough, Sierra Leone is an oil country, by the way. So we're talking, there were investments that were made, and actually HUD was even a partner with us because HUD was developing housing in Sierra Leone when I got there, because we had just purchased our own pre-manufactured housing plant, and we were developing housing that was to go overseas, and in exchange we were pulling Sierra Leone resources, manufactured materials, and bringing them onto the open market. In the course of my being involved in TAI, we eventually became consulate for the Republic of Sierra Leone. I think that was in 1979, 1980, 81, somewhere around there. I think it was 80, 81. And so we were. So what had happened for me, because of Mr. Beckett and because my father had served, and I was running around this country with diplomatic immunity with a felony. I was a felon with diplomatic immunity.
Wow.
And I kind of took a lot of advantage on that one. I know, but that's only because, it's not because of me. It's because of the men who made the investment in me and what they had done. And I continually say that, and I will say that throughout this. Everything that I'm telling you was not because of anything that I have accomplished on my own, but it was because of what someone did for me, to empower me and to make me a success. I'm capitalizing on all of the seeds that were planted by my forefathers. They told me where they planted the seeds, and they told me how to harvest because they knew they were going to be gone. So now it's my turn to harvest from what they have planted, and in turn plant seeds so those who come behind me will be able to harvest that which I have planted and bring to fruition. So on that note, we had just been awarded the consulate. We had put the consulate offices in Hayward, California, and we were functioning there, doing, consulate business, everything from economic development to checking on Sierra Leone nationals and what have you, visas, et cetera, issuing visas and all that. And then we had a very interesting meeting in San Diego, and it was in regards to a new mine that we had discovered, a new resource that we had discovered in Sierra Leone. And so we were down there with Bradley and a bunch of other folks because we were talking about developing more in Africa, and we made that announcement.
When you say Bradley, do you mean Tom Bradley, former mayor of LA, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I kind of remember that because I actually came to the meeting in my three-piece, and I didn't wear my coat, and I got reprimanded because I wasn't in my suit coat because I had never been in front of government officials, and I'm a new kid, I'm just everything is new, and I have no idea of protocol, so I got schooled pretty quickly. But it was at that meeting that it was the Agency for International Development was also involved because it was a meeting for trade and commerce that aid was involved in I guess sponsoring in some kind of way and making happen, bringing various factions and various companies together. And it was at that meeting we made the announcement that we had discovered platinum at that and a country and like I said, this is only my opinion, but a country that had never experienced a coup or an attempted coup. Within 2 months after that announcement, we had our first attempted coup, and then within a year we were in a bloodbath, which later became known as the Blood Diamond Conflict.
This interview. This is mind blowing. That literally retired me from.
I literally ran from California, and I wound up, in Minnesota for 5 years. Nobody kind of knew where I was, and my mom and dad didn't let it. People thought I was dead, actually, but the bloodbath was so, and it still is traumatic, based on the nature of the bloodshed that happened, in the Civil War conflict. I'm also very much involved. At the same time, I was also involved in South Africa. Then I guess after I surfaced back in Minnesota, I wound up being involved in the Sudan issue with Dr. Rick Machar and a few of those rebels, John Grange, Dr. Machar, and seems like and then I was I've been working in Sudan, Kenya, Egypt, Tanzania. I just got a call today for help in Morocco and not Tanzania. It's TUN. I forget how to pronounce that. I'm drawing a blank right now.
Tanzania.
But Tanzania, exactly. And a gentleman out of Canada wants to develop some trade ties and start exporting out of Canada into Africa, into the African markets.
Wow, that's awesome.
But as I go back to the TransAfrica, the coup, of course, stopped all kinds of commerce and activity. But the one piece right before that had happened, TransAfrica International had just been elected to become the foreign exchange agent for the country of Sierra Leone. We had developed a way of being able to take the Leone, which was operating on a poor foreign exchange rate. I mean, it was 40 to 1 in the market, but it would take up to 6 months for the exchange to actually happen because they hadn't capitalized on their resources for backing, and there were a number of oil companies that were in Sierra Leone that were Leone rich, and they couldn't figure out how to convert that. So what we did was we functioned as an agent in manufacturing. We actually utilized the Leones to manufacture products, and then we would export those finished products out, thereby converting the Leone into cash for companies like Standard Oil and I forget the other one that was there. I keep thinking Chevron or 76, but it was I know Standard Oil, and there was one other company that was operating out of that region, producing oil. So we, as I said, we were then being put into a position of actually functioning as the foreign exchange agent for the country of Sierra Leone, and we were moving forward. But the Blood Diamond situation, or the civil war in Sierra Leone, put a squelch on a lot of that. A lot of our people were killed too in that conflict. A lot of things were lost, and particularly what I'm trying to work on right now is the repair of the youth. The tens of thousands of youth that were trained in how to kill. They're adults now. Mm-hmm. With the same trauma and PTSD, right, that I experienced. And so there's a lot of healing that needs to go on, but Sierra Leone is back on the map. They're beginning to do some things. I currently work in Sierra Leone, Liberia, Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, Kenya, Sudan, and a couple of spots here and there. We were trying to do some things in the Congo, but there's a number of projects that we're working to bring to fruition based on. One of the key things about Africa, interesting enough, is that when it comes to the opportunities to explore technology and the implementation of newer technologies, Africa is a gorgeous campus to develop those technologies. As a matter of fact, when it comes to things like precision agriculture, which is something that people here are beginning to address, and particularly here in Minnesota. But Africa is 7 years ahead of us in implementation of precision agriculture. It's just phenomenal what they're doing. So there's a phenomenal amount of opportunity in creating.
What is precision agriculture? What is precision
agriculture? It is the combination of robotics, AI, and machining. CNC, everything from, how deep, setting up robots to plant the seed perfectly and water it with the right amount of water, aquaponics, hydroponics, that's all precision agriculture.
Oh, wow.
All of those technologies, vertical farming is part of precision agriculture.
Oh, wow. I'm actually working with a group right now that's looking to bring some, it's a aquaponic, vertical nano farming system.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, so we should talk about that. But I wanted to ask you about open source software. What role has open source software?
Excuse me.
Yeah, what role has open source software played in your time that you are, the CTO of the Global Business Incubation organization?
That's a real loaded question. And the reason I say that is because I've been doing open source since 1978.
Wow.
I grew up in Silicon Valley, and I cut my teeth on an old Unix box, programming in the Unix world, and the notion of open source versus closed source was very high in the area. I truly believe and function with open source versus closed source, because open source is like the jazz of how I put it. It's open source and closed source. Okay, well, closed source is classical music. I love classical music, but it's written and you do not deviate. Open source allows you to improvise and do all kinds of things. Facebook was started by open source software. Google was started by open source software. My contention these days is that a lot of us who created a lot of this open source software, these companies came in, hijacked it, now they closed source it, now they're making money, and they didn't pay us. Google, Facebook, Twitter. I have some of the original source code that Facebook started with. It's just
now I'm not going to be able to let you just drop that comment. Come on, you have some of the original code that Facebook was started with. Now break that down. It was all open source. All of it was open source. And some of the development. Even the developers. Most developers, most of us geeks, we're always pulling from open source libraries and doing stuff and creating hacks, Like GitHub. GitHub is a place we go a lot.
Well, that's the latest place. We used to, you got to remember, I grew up on bulletin boards. In the old bulletin board world, the old CPM world, when you had a 300 baud modem. And you had repositories where you could pull, code and data, and it was a little bit different world. But the development of applications. I know I've had a couple of. I had a good friend of mine. He was the one that developed the concept or developed the actual erasable ink for Gillette, and he didn't get a dime.
Oh, wow.
Because he was an employee.
Wow.
But the open source is the jazz of software. It's also too, from the aspect closed source, when you're, it was interesting. One of the things that I use as an example, when you're programming a CPU,
right?
That the CPU, the code that comes from this, that they implement into your CPUs comes from multiple different companies. There's a million lines of code that Intel pulls from different companies, and a closed source, you have no idea what they're writing in that CPU.
No, you don't. And a lot of these companies, because it's closed source, they have all kinds of back doors to take all kinds of data off your system.
Exactly, and that's what they do. And you're literally paying them to spy on you, because now you have to license it. Now, interesting enough, one of the things that's happened over the last 20 years, or actually since the 90s, has been the infiltration of closed source companies like Microsoft, folks like that who have infiltrated the open source world, and the software that we used to be able to pull down that actually worked no longer works as well as the paid for version that supports.
Right.
Like Salesforce. Salesforce is a prime example. That was open source for many years. And then now if you pull down the community version, it's got all kinds of bugs. But of course, if you pull down the paid for version, it works perfectly.
Right.
The notion of even some of the programming. I'm not a big fan of Microsoft or Google or a lot of those companies, only because I know that they've hired trolls to run into these to open source forums and literally make open source less of an option for people because of the amount of money that they were losing. It's all about the money and not about the quality of service or the quality of product that you're getting. But yeah, I've got code that I've written and that we've had, that we've partook in since 1982.
Oh, wow. So my question to you is, for the entrepreneur who is, starting out and wanting to scale their business operations using open source, what are some effective strategies to utilize, and what are some solid software packages that you would recommend? There's a number of them that I recommend. I mean, I was just reviewing the most current list on some of the things that are out there, but accounting software versus enterprise management software versus HR packages, versus. But I'll put it like this, based on this current state of affairs that we're in, open source offers you a way of being able to reduce the initial cost of software development if you need to, but at the same time, you're having to expend the cost of developers in order to work the code to where you want it versus buying a QuickBooks package, and just having it all there, and being ready to go. So it's really a matter of what you are trying to do. Now, for the sake of also this conversation, when it comes to things like, your Microsoft Office package 365 and that whole deal versus like an open source contender, that's a no-brainer. Why pay Microsoft 365 when you can download LibreOffice or OpenOffice and do the exact same thing? As a matter of fact, Microsoft had to create and had to catch up with OpenOffice because OpenOffice had created a new standard, the DOCX file, and Microsoft didn't have that. They had to come up to speed so that they could compete. So in various simple tools of that nature, open source offers a very good way of being able to get up and running and reduce cost of operations. But at the same time, you do need to have, it's not a place where you can just go download something and necessarily make it work. You might need a high schooler, someone who's got a little understanding of systems, someone who's in a STEM class to install it, make it work, set it up. Mm-hmm. So but it really depends on what it is that you're trying to deal with. Like, let's say, for example, I wasn't prepared really for that question. Otherwise, I'd have had a list up of kind of the top, systems out now. But like for ERP and so let's see, for ERP and not content, but CRM, ERP, and those areas, there's a phenomenal number of packages that can be used to replace your current paid for, or I should say, closed source packages. You're going to pay for the software one way or another, either in labor and time or in back end support. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts on the best project management open source tools?
Well, there's two that I use, Project to Work, and I also use one that was called Dot Project. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a number of them, like let's say Project Libre is a good one. Dot to Project, that's an old open source project management, but it hasn't been updated for quite a long time, but it's phenomenal and it still works, and it works very well. Project to Work, let's see, what are some of the others? Orange Scrum is a nice open source. Even, I haven't played around with Odoo, but, I'm hearing some good things about the Odoo suite, mm-hmm. And then also some bad things. Let's see, let me get some list. Airtable, Avaza, Backlog, ClickUp, Flowloo, FeedCamp. Yeah, it's supposed to be open source. Yep, free. Now, it's interesting, too, because software like Dolabar I use for my ERP also contains within it project management capabilities. So a lot, Project Libra, Tiagra, Open Project was another one that I've dealt with. Let's see, Open Workbench. It's called Tuliap. I haven't heard of that one, but that was a tool that it seemed like when the term Agile came out, everybody was, looking at Agile and Scrum,
Right.
So Tuliap was one of the tools that they used for that. I know I had one on accounting systems. Open Manage, project management software, open source. Let's see, license, Apache license, Apache Allura, Apache Office Biz, Apache Bloodhound, Calligra Plan. Let's see, Collaborative. Dot Project was the one I always loved, and still use. Endeavor Software Project Management. Also eGroupware. eGroupware was a good one too. I used to use that one years ago before I started going with Dot Project.
Oh, wow.
Fang Office. I use Fang Office as my collaborative piece, but there's project management capabilities in there. Mm-hmm. On the community version, it's kind of lightweight, and it's good for most projects. But on the paid-for version, you get a little bit more connectivity between other software, not necessarily related to Fang Office, but your Microsoft's Outlook, and it integrates a little bit with those. You have integration that you don't get with the community version. I'm looking at Falso CM. That's probably Scrum. I haven't seen that one. Fusion Forge, Nat Project, or GANT. GANTT project. That's open source. Let's see, another one is Launchpad, LibrePlan, out of the LibreOffice suite. LibrePlan, which is Java. Launchpad is written in Python. By the way, Nat Project and Fusion Forge. Fusion Forge is written in PHP. Nat Project is Java. Fossil SCM is SQLite and C. So that should probably run real fast because it's written in C and it's not an interpretive language. Fang Office is PHP. A lot of these are, of course, PHP and Java deployments. Let me continue real quick. Besides, Mantis BT is another project management piece that's open source, Open Workbench. Interesting enough, PHP Groupware and PHP Project. Now, I'm going through these and I'm looking at a list, of all of the open source and closed source. And so some of these projects, are active and some of them aren't. So right now I can't tell you which ones are still active or have had contributions within the last 2 months or a year. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's one of the ways that you can tell if you're looking to use open source, you want to find an application that is currently being updated and maintained, by the community that's helping to build it. In other words, they've updated it within the last 2 months or within the last week, as opposed to hasn't been updated for 3 years.
Right.
When I see stuff like that, that tells me that the project and community is probably no longer very active.
Right.
And if I have issues, I will be hard pressed to find solutions.
Right.
But active projects, but that's the kicker when you use open source, is you want to use applications that are actively being supported by the community that is around them. And one of the ways you can always, see some of that activity is by going into their community forums and looking at, when was the last time somebody, made a comment, or had an issue.
Right.
And so there is a way of being able to capitalize on open source software for the reduction of costs for operations and for which includes not only operations from HR management and accounting, mm-hmm. but even marketing, sales, and integrating such new concepts as even AI. There are AI packages that are open source.
Oh, wow.
Red Booth, no, not Red Booth, excuse me. Project QTOR is another one. Mm-hmm. Project.net is another open source. Project Libra is back in that Libra group. Tiaga, Taiga. I can't really pronounce that. That's a little bit of a newer one. It's written in Python. A lot of people are doing Python now. Track is another Python project management that runs on the BSD license. Tulip and VPMI are Web2 project. And as I said, my go-to project management software is Web2 Project and Dot Project. Those are the two I use. Even though Dot Project hasn't been supported in a number of years, we did a deployment and we were able to make it work. And we've been maintaining our additions over the years, and so it's been forked so that we don't have an issue with it. It works phenomenally. Gives me my NAT charts. Gives me my NAT charts and a few things that you look for in a project management type of software.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's some great information. Great information for our listeners. We're actually preparing for that'll be on the ECI Network's website. I was actually working on over this last couple of weeks, and I just released the learning management systems that are open source that people can look at, because we're doing distance learning now, and that was a big thing. So we took a look at Cameo, Moodle, Caroline, eFront, Dokio's, TC Exam, Omeka, ATutor, Gibbon, Forma, Ilias, Xtray, Savsoft, OpenSIS,
as the current ones that were viable candidates in the open source world to utilize for your LMS or learning management system in-house. Mm-hmm. They were alternatives to Blackboard. And think about this, Blackboard, who's making all this money now because of their learning management system, that was open source too.
Wow.
I believe they forked it off of Moodle or Dokios, and then they tried to, and here's the kicker, then they tried to patent the name LMS. So that even if you were open source, you see, this is how they work it. You know, it's like they'll infiltrate, they'll get in, and then they try to destroy the communities. You know, because the open source robs the technology giants from their
monopoly.
From their monopoly, exactly. And the other piece that I love about open source, you give kids, you take in a high school, grade school, even college, you give them open source and let them play with it. Man, what they can come up with.
Yeah, that's incredible. So how can people connect with you if they want to, learn more about open source or, talk to you about any software development projects?
Well, I am available online. They can connect with me through ecinetworks.com. They can connect with me directly and give me a call. Our company phone is 877-568-4321. In other words, 4ECI, 877-564-ECI. Or my cell phone is 612-242-1962. My email address is P as in Paul, Ruffin, just like David and Jimmy Ruffin. I'm not a singer, by the way. I'm just a bass player. And at ecinetworksllc.com or pruffin@gbi.systems. Or they could call you. and you can put them in contact with me.
Yes, I sure can. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the Jazz and Tech Lounge with Lady Z. And you have been listening to the Jazz and Tech Lounge with Lady Z, where we explore tech and enjoy the music while learning the secrets to success in business, technology, and music on Bashani Radio, iHeartRadio, and iTunes. Bashani Radio, always talking about everything from New York City. You can listen to the Jazz and Tech Lounge with Lady Z on any mobile phone or tablet device. The Jazz and Tech Lounge with Lady Z, where we explore tech and enjoy the music. Thank you so much. Please follow us online at www.ladyvhe.com and on all social networks. And I'm proud to announce that the archives of my podcast are now live on ladyz.com. So not only can you get information about upcoming and current episodes, but you can definitely go down memory lane with the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time,